the next thing I'd like to look into is embedding media inside of a web page. This is done in HTML5 very simply. Ultimately here we're going to look at embedding still images, which technically could be animated if you included a GIF or GIF. We will also look at embedding audio and embedding video. Those are the different basic kinds of media that are ubiquitous nowadays. So here I have just another example page set up with the boilerplate code pulled in and a little bit of customization for the various titles and headers that we have around here. So I went ahead and got this set already so that we wouldn't have to do that on the video. I've also downloaded a few media files. You can look around and find these on the web, well, most of them, but you might want to make sure that you have a few things here. I will put out links to all of these so that you can also download them yourself and follow along. A couple of these are my own pictures of my cat that I'm putting in here, so the rest of them are things I just grabbed off of the web from various locations. Let's go ahead and start here in the section with what is perhaps the most obvious thing, how to include an image. Images are all over the place on the web. Well, because of that, one of the oldest and most original tags that we can use in HTML is the img tag, and that's for images. Everything is done in an image tag using its attributes. So we have to tell it where the image is located, and that's done with a source attribute. We say source equals, and then we need to give it the name of an image file that's supported, which these days is just about every kind of image file you could think of. I have JPEG images specifically, so we'll be doing those. And I need to make sure here that I'm careful about how I type this in. Example 4 is sitting right here in the Worked Examples folder. However, the image is over under the Media folder, which is inside of Worked Examples. So I need to make sure and specify that path. I go into Media / and then let's do Xerxes before.jpg, and that'll give me the image one. Now, it's important to note that images require a certain amount of ableness, namely you have to be able to see. And so it's important that in order to maintain accessibility, you provide an alternative description of it that could be used by, say, a screen reader or some other device that someone who can't see might be using to browse your page. This is in fact required, and it's called alt. Alt needs to be a text description of the image you've included. You can go ahead and then close out the image tag. We'll type in the alt here in a moment. This is the basics that you need for every image tag. Alt is required, and you should fill it in. My cat sitting on top of a large box. And we'll say my cat Xerxes sitting on top of a large box. So make sure for every image you should really have a source. This source could actually, you could paste in here any valid URL from anywhere on the web, but in our case we want it to point specifically to our image. And we would have to make sure that these are both located on the server and accessible from the same place. And then the alt is an alternative description that you can use if you are looking at the image and you are unable to see. So you could use that for screen readers, for braille readers, and other things that allow people to access the web. That's all the content or information it needs to actually create the tag. So it's a self-closing tag, and you would never put anything inside of it. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's see what we get. Control-Shift-Q. There he is, Xerxes sitting on top of a box. Now, I don't necessarily want it to be that big. So let's see what we can do to adjust this. This is a bit of a large image. We can do that using styles, and that's normally how you'd want to do it. But this is not a case where I'd want every image to have exactly the same style. I might like to apply styles only to this one image. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to instead say style equals, and then right in here I can put any style rules that I want to apply only to this image. Specifically, I'd like to say the width is equal to, let's say, excuse me, width is equal to, but we use colons when we're doing styles, 300 pixels. And then put a semicolon because that is one rule right there. These will be similar to what we did with tables just a little bit ago. Let's save that, and then let's refresh. There we go. It's a little more reasonable. Now, One thing that you should note here is that when you do this and you force the width to be a certain size, they're still downloading the image in full size. And I could even right click and say open image in new tab. You'll see it's the full size image, which is 1165 by 1440. That's what my camera does. Just because you made it appear smaller on the page doesn't mean they have any less data to download. So keep that in mind. You'd have to actually resize it and provide an entirely new image if you wanted it to be smaller. And you really should. If you're providing thumbnails of any kind, resize the image and provide both the full size and the thumbnails separately. That's a whole other class, another idea that you can explore on your own. Let's put in another one. I've got two images here. I'm just going to duplicate that tag, and this one's called Xerxes After. My cat Xerxes sitting inside of a large box. Spoiler alert. So if we bring that one in, we'll save it, refresh it. There we go, two side by side. But notice something here. One of these is portrait while the other is landscape. I don't necessarily want to apply that width 300 to the landscape image. I don't have to, because the style applies only to the tag it's inside of. So let's say this one should be something like 450. We'll try and find the perfect target here. It needs to be a little more than that. Maybe it's more like 600. I don't think this is a 2-to-1 ratio though. Yeah, that's too much. What about 530? I'm just guessing check here. That's a valid method. Getting close. Maybe it's 500. Oh yeah, because it's 5 by 3. Ah, we're close. Almost, because it's not perfectly 5 by 3. At this point, we're splitting hairs, right? 495. Little by little. Close enough. I'll take it. So there we go. We've got our before and our after pictures. I might also like to provide a little caption for these, right? For that, we probably want a forced line break. This is not necessarily the best way to do it, but that's what I'm going to do. And then let's just have a little caption right here. My cat XES loves cardboard boxes. Now remember, we do have a caption tag, but those only work inside tables. And we also have fig caption, which could be used inside figures. And maybe all of this actually wants to be inside a figure, I don't know. But I am just going to let it be what it is for right now. Let me reload this. There we go. My cat Xerxes loves cardboard boxes. Just for fun, let's try and use figure. We'll pull these on in here. I don't know that the default browser actually does anything different when it's a figure. Is it fig caption? I don't remember. But I don't have to. That's what the internet's for. Refresh. Hey, yeah, it did kind of do it differently, didn't it? Cool. And let's see, did I use the right one? HTML5 fig caption. Yes, it looks like that is the right way to do it. Fig caption tag. Cool. So there we go. Now it's an actual figure, and that's being respected. All right, so that's how we can bring in some images. Of course, images are just sort of where things begin. One other thing I should point out. The alt text does get used. If I were to hover over this for a moment, please, I probably have to click on it. Oh, it's not doing it. Some browsers, apparently not Safari, will display the alt text as a tooltip pop-up if you hover over the image for a while. I'm curious. I guess it's been a long time since I've checked that. Let's open this up in Chrome and see if Chrome will do it. Apparently not. Must be an old thing. Notice all that text I put in for the alt doesn't really show up anywhere. But of course it's there for a very special purpose. That would only happen in unusual cases that are not my case here. All right, let's keep moving forward. So that's how you can include images. Let's take a look at some other things. I'm going to put in a couple of BRs here to get us fully down away from our images. And I've grabbed a couple of little short audio clips right here. Let's pull those in. The tag is just audio, and the audio tag itself doesn't necessarily need any properties inside of it. Whenever we're pulling in something that's more complicated than an image, we often need to provide more than one version of it. This is because not all browsers can decode all different types of audio and video. Different people like Apple have settled on certain standards versus Google versus all the other people that make browsers. So you need to provide different versions of it depending on what browser your users might be using. Of course, your users might be using any browser. These days, the two big ones are the iPhone iOS browser, Safari Mobile, I believe it's called, and then the Chrome browser on Android. That's actually the number one, the Chrome mobile browser, because everybody browses the web on their phone. Chrome does best with certain file types, iOS does best with other file types, and you have to respect that, even though we'd rather not. So, we tell it it's an audio tag, but then we need to tell it, here's all the different possible versions of it you could grab, and the browser will grab the one that makes the most sense for it. We use a source tag to do this. Let's take a look at this here real quick. Here's a couple examples. You have to provide two things inside the source tag. First, a path to the file itself, which is the source attribute. So source, in my case, is going to equal media/homer1.wav. And then you have to tell it what type the particular source is. This is what's called a MIME type. You don't have to worry too much about these. There's really only a few of them that you can do when you're doing audio or video, and W3 Schools will list them out for you so you can know which ones to grab. Now, mine is actually in WAV format, which is an uncompressed format. You would normally never want to use it, but it has the benefit that everything can play it. So we're going to say it is audio/WAV, and you can see that listed down here as an option, audio/WAV. And then we close our source tag, which is a self-closing tag. Now, if we had more than one form of Homer 1, we also had MP3 or something like that, we would list them all here. But these should all be the exact same audio file, just in different forms. So there we go. We include the audio, we give it the source. Let's save that, and let's return to that tag or page and see what happens. Nothing. There's a reason for that. When we include audio, by default, it sort of assumes that you don't want to mess with it. Maybe you want to play it using JavaScript. You could trigger it as an event, or maybe you want to do something else. In our case, we definitely want to be able to let the user play it, so we need to tell it that. And to do that, you say controls. That says, please provide the controls for this particular audio sample. And it's a Boolean, so you just include it. You don't have to say equals anything. And after it's loaded the audio file, there we go. Now this little player will look different depending on your browser. The browser decides how it's going to present it. This is what Safari presents. And exactly what controls are available is inconsistent. So if you use this particular tag, prepare for it to look a little bit different in every browser. But it's still a more universal way to include video or audio inside your page. Let's go ahead and try a little bit of video as well. So that gets us our audio in there. I have a second audio in here too. I might as well pull in. So we put audio, controls. This one's Homer 2. Refresh. Woohoo! There we go. We got our two little things. Now, let's see about video. Video is not a whole lot different. We go ahead and we say video as the tag, and then we need to provide it different forms of the video for different sources. So we again use source tags, but this time we're going to specify two. I have a little clip here from Big Buck Bunny. This was shamelessly taken from the W3 Schools page. And this one now, we need to specify a different type for it. I've got two of them. I've got an MP4 and I've got an OOG Vorbis. So let's go ahead and put both of those in there because they're both exactly the same clip. OOG is preferred by Chrome and MP4 is preferred by Apple's browsers. Now let's go ahead and go back over here to this and let's go to the HTML video tag because we need to look up what the proper MIME type is. Okay, not surprising. Video MP4 and video OGG. So let's put that in there. This one is video/MP4. Oop, gotta spell it right. This one's video/OGG. Now it's only going to load one of these, one single video, based on which one it thinks is the best one to load. So let's go ahead and go back to media here. Oop, I'm totally clicking the wrong thing. Click refresh. And it still didn't show up. But I believe there's a reason for that. Once again, you need to tell it that you want the user to have control. So let's include our controls. Oop. Let's try this again. It says loading, so it hasn't been able to load that up yet. Now, if you ever get a result like this, where it says loading and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, this probably means there's something wrong with the media itself. The first thing I would recommend doing is going over and checking to make sure you specify the right path to it. And I double checked these, and this is all spelled correctly. It does seem to be the right path. This is Safari, so it should be grabbing the MP4 file. So what's going wrong here? The next thing you're definitely going to want to check is the file itself. And I just did that, went over here, took a look at this, and realized it was 0 bytes. Somehow I had screwed up in downloading it. So I went back, grabbed it again. Now it seems to be downloaded right. Let's refresh and see what happens. It's still not happy. Well, maybe you were yelling at me through the screen. Turned out I had just misspelled it. I had said M-O-V-E instead of just M-O-V. So once I fixed the spelling, there it is. It came in just fine. And we have our controls. You can press play, watch the little butterfly, wait for it. Poor butterfly. So there we go. You'll notice things like full screen controls will be automatically available from this. There's all kinds of little things that it can pull out here that you can use. So keep all that in mind. This can be a very handy thing to engage, but it all is very much dependent on the browser that the user is coming at you with. I find these often work really well when you're pulling them up on a phone. The built-in browsers on the phones actually handle this really well, whereas if you tried to use an embedded player, it may or may not work well. Now, what do I mean by embedded player? That would be if you were hosting your video over on YouTube or Vimeo or some other service like that. You're probably watching this video right now in an embedded player because we need to host them somewhere. When you don't have the space to host it yourself, you often need to use their embedded player. And when it comes time to use it, they'll usually give you a little bit of HTML code to embed it in. Now these days, most of those players are very smart. They recognize what device they're on and they just work. But the built-in one, when the little media sample is fairly small, works quite well. I'd encourage you to use it whenever it's appropriate. So that's everything we're going to look at for media. So we looked at how to embed images. This is something we'll be doing lots of, so make sure you're comfortable with that. And then a couple more modern ways to embed audio and video. And of course, if you're going to actually embed video from something like YouTube or Vimeo or some other service, that's done differently. They'll provide you the code to actually embed that into your HTML if you just find the right place for it. I leave that up to you guys to explore if you ever want to go there.